We're Jan and Marvin, and brown signs are our favorite. What do brown signs mean? Yes, recreation. But for us, we prefer recreation. Every day a new opportunity to learn, grow, and appreciate.
So it's been a while since we did our last video, so we thought perhaps we should bring you up to speed as to where we are and what we're up to. As most of you probably, like Jan and I did, we had American history classes in high school and junior high, and as you probably like us, you've forgotten most of everything that you learned back then. So what if you had an opportunity to go back and kind of relive or relearn all those things that you learned on paper back then? But you had an opportunity to do it by traveling to those things and walking in the steps and experiencing firsthand some of the locations that where history was made. And that's kind of what Jan and I have decided to do, is we've decided to take what we're calling a purpose-driven travel and go relearn some of the history that we've long since forgotten.
So what we found once again is that there is so much to see, more than we probably would ever have time to cover. So we've had to choose as carefully as we could. So the natural place to start is the east. Not that there isn't any history in Missouri, but this is certainly where some formative events happened here in Virginia and the Carolinas. So there's more than just battles and revolutions and intrigue and spies and things like that. There's literally history here and around the country for just about everything and every group. There's American Indians and African Americans and hats and trains and communication and medicine and so much, and it's all important in its own way. So we had to choose, and so the East Coast was where we headed this time.
So this first video is pretty much just our traveling from Missouri out to the East Coast. We're going to travel through the Smokies, and we'll show you some of the clips of that. But this is primarily part one. Hopefully there'll be a part two down the road someplace. But this is our first attempt at reliving history. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Hopefully you'll learn something like we did. And if you don't enjoy the video, that's okay. Our next video is going to be on American literature. We were actually in the Smokies last fall, but in a different part of the park. There are plenty of leaves still on the trees, and while there wasn't much contrast, it was still a beautiful time of year to be there.
The Justice Apple Orchard is a Harvest Host site just outside Hendersonville, North Carolina. It's a fourth-generation farm offering a dozen varieties of apples to pick or to buy, plus all the apple-related products you could think of. And yes, we bought some, plus found cabbages almost Alaska size. Lots of coleslaw was in our future.
Our next stop was just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina at the Billy Graham Library. This was a special stop and well worth it. It's a combination of homestead, biography, and testimony. It's extremely well done, the technology is amazing, the history is incredible, and it's a recommended stop for anyone with an interest in Graham, his work, his life, and his legacy.
Close to Charlotte, North Carolina is the boyhood home of our 5th president, Andrew Jackson. It's located today in a state park with a great campground and offers a number of historical displays. One highlight is a grand sculpture of the young old hickory, glimpsing what impact was lying ahead of him, far from the difficulties of his family's early life. Moores Creek Battlefield was our first battlefield visit. As we mentioned at the beginning, there are so many locations where our country's early days happened. This is located close to Curie, North Carolina, and the mile-long trail took us through what transpired in 1776. This site was a battle between patriots, those in rebellion against the British government, and loyalists, a force of Scotch Highlanders and other British supporters. Interesting item. Basically, at this time, except for Native Americans, all of the people in America were British in origin, so it was almost as much of a civil war as the one fought 60 years later. The Highlanders and Loyalists, because Great Britain had promised them land in the New World, fought for their side, and that was worth fighting for. The Patriots sought an end to the burdens from the monarchy, the common fight for freedom. Just one history lesson. Located on the outer banks of North Carolina is Fort Macon. This fort is interesting because of its role in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II. Defense of the East Coast has historically been seen as critical, and since 1826, through 3 name changes and as many activations and deactivations, it remains of interest to thousands of visitors. We were able to see quite a bit, but the state park is still dealing with repairs due to Hurricane Florence, which was in September of 2018, when rain forced the closure of about half the displays. Not sure how long until those reopen, but it's probably worth going back.
Of course, we had to spend some time at the beach. And there's no place in the East Coast, this part of the East Coast anyway, that has a more beautiful beach than Cape Hatteras. So we spent a couple of days just kind of wandering around and watching the surf and watching the dolphins off the shore before we went on to continue our history lesson.
Water over there?
There's a stream over there, yeah. Okay, let's not say anything